quick, Gabriela, I wish I got more time to chat with you before we started. That was like a 5-minute, like, hey, welcome. Let's do this.
Yes. So we're recording right now, and in exactly 10 seconds, we're going to go live. I'm going to kick it off. Gabriela de Queiroz. That's the way to say it, right?
Perfect.
Awesome. All right. Okay. Now we're open. People are joining. All right. Hello, everyone. Hello. Hey.
Hey, guys. Can you just put where you're from in the chat so we can see everybody?
Yes, please do that.
Hi, Jen.
Hey, Jennifer. How are you?
Hello.
I think Jennifer has been for all of the webinars.
I know, right? We'll have to get her on one.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Can you type where you're from so we have an idea where you're listening to us? Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia.
Right.
Awesome. Hi,
It's
Robert
far away.
from Florida.
Rio de Janeiro,
Rio de Janeiro.
Boston.
Curitiba. Yay. Amanda. Ooh.
Toronto.
Hi, John.
All right, all right. Mexico. Cool. All right, let's wait for another like 2 minutes to give this a quick start. Keep chatting with yourselves and with others, and say hey and hello and how are you, and yeah.
And I feel like we always ask people to invite their moms. So if your mom wants to.
Oh yeah, that's true. remember that there's still time for people to register. So if you want your mom to hear what you this and to see that you're not crazy and you're really doing things that other people do, yeah, you just ask her to be here. Colombia. Curitiba. Where's Curitiba?
Brazil.
Okay. Dublin. Brazil. Okay, so we're gonna start this right now. All right, thank you everyone for being here. We're very excited to have you, and this is another session of Data Science Live. Here we have a very special guest. She's Gabriela de Queiroz. You can see her right now, and she's gonna join us discussing a very interesting topic. And the topic is asking good questions as a data scientist. We're gonna kick off by asking Gabriela, what does she do, where does she work, and something about herself.
Awesome. So thank you very much for having me. Thanks for the invitation. So as you can probably hear or see, I'm in a cafe here in San Francisco. So I'm sorry about the noise and the music. At least the music's good here, so we can enjoy good music. So I'm Gabriela de Queiroz. I'm a developer advocate at IBM. Before that, or throughout my career, I was a data scientist. And before being a data scientist, I was a statistician. So I did statistics on my undergraduate in Brazil, and then a master's in epidemiology, also in Brazil. And then I moved to San Francisco 6 years ago. And then I kind of like became a data scientist. So it's been an interesting journey. I have a lot of like experience in the startup world. And then this year I moved to IBM, which is a huge company. So I went from one extreme to the other. So I can talk about the two sides of companies. So thank you very much again for having me. And let's kick this off.
So before starting, I think I have a question. Can you explain what is to be like to be a developer advocate? What does that mean?
Yeah, so it's a pretty cool role, to be honest. Is so one of the like there are a lot of responsibilities that you have, but one of them is to go out there and to talk about things that either your team is doing or things that you are passionate about. So, for example, my team is working on something called Model Asset Exchange, which is like a deep learning, like a free and open source place for you to find deep learning models that you can use and deploy and so on. So I talk about that project as well as things that I'm passionate about, such as our lady data science in general. So I go to a lot of conferences and give talks. But also I do the development side of things. So I help the team with developing new tools for deep learning. And I think a lot of like the usability, like the point of view. So this role is very different from my past role where I was analyzing data, like data from the company and creating models, predictive models or machine learning models. So that's pretty much what a developer advocate does.
That's awesome. That sounds like a really fun role.
It is fun because like you can choose whatever you want to work on, especially my team because we are open source team. So, you know, we can kind of like pick and choose. I want to talk about this project, or I want to talk about R, for example, which is something that my team is not using, but I'm passionate about. So it's more about like how do you bring awareness of the company, like to the public.
Awesome. And so when you were working on data science projects, what type of stakeholders did you typically work with, and what did those relationships look like?
Yeah, so like for example, my last position, I was leading the team of the data scientists. So it was a very small group. We had 4 or 5 people, and because it was a very small company, we worked with like the CEO, the CTO, the CFO, and all the C-level stakeholders. So they would either come to me and ask for some data or projects, like some kind of like questions that they had about the business, and then I had to use the data to explain what they were asking for. And then other teams, like the engineering team, would come to us and ask some questions as well. So we had to collaborate with all the teams inside the company, either like answering questions or thinking about new problems and all that.
And can you tell me about what was the state of the questions when they typically got to you? Was it like, we know what we want? Was it, you know, we have this idea? Was it, we think we want this? Like, what did that look like?
All over. So sometimes they knew exactly what they wanted, especially those people that were aware of the business, like, or they had previous experience with the business. But sometimes they were like, I'm not sure what kind of questions I should be asking. Can you help me? Mm-hmm. So I would help them formulate questions and think about what are some key things that we should keep in mind if we want our business to grow, or what kind of metrics we should be adding to our workflow, for example.
Mm-hmm. And so tell us about a time that you had to ask questions to get at that, you know, well-defined metrics and nailing down exactly what the deliverable was.
Let me think about. So I think questions around metrics is a very common one, where they don't know, because they don't know what kind of data that we have available. They sometimes don't know what kind of metrics we should be measuring. But I'm trying to think in a like a real example. Yeah, I'm not sure if I have a good example for that, but it's more like brainstorming together. Like I don't remember like a very structured example, but it's more about like, can we think about what is the goal? What is the goal that we have, and how can we achieve the goal?
One question here. When you're doing these kind of things and you're going to a meeting with stakeholders, do you write down your questions beforehand, or you go there and just ask stuff?
I try to put some time on thinking about the questions beforehand. So we have a plan, like at least myself, I have a plan well defined, like in the sense that I know exactly where I'm going to, or where I'm trying to go to, like this is my goal. So how can what are the questions that I should be asking the stakeholders to get to this point? Sometimes it can be like questions around knowledge that I don't have, like because they are usually the ones participating on this, like very important discussions. Sometimes we are not included. So I have to ask those questions so I can understand what they are trying to do.
Right, and so you had that context up front because they came. I'm just trying to like spell out the process. So it looks like the process is a stakeholder would come to you. They're looking for this project or a model to sort of give them some information, and then you're setting up a meeting, and then you're going to that meeting with questions that you've prepared based on what they said they think they want through like an email or something.
Exactly. And even like when we were planning, we had like bi-weekly planning, right? So we had some requests from several people. Then once those requests were assigned to people in my team, one of the roles that or the things that we had to do was to sit with the stakeholder to understand what they are asking for exactly. So what are you looking for as an answer? Like not as an answer, but like what kind of like final product or things that you are trying to get from that I can help you with. So it was very important for each of us to sit with the stakeholder to understand what they were trying to do.
Yeah. I think like the common one that I see is when people are like, we want to know what a successful customer looks like. And it's like, well, define success. Like let's talk about real specifically, what do you think success is in this scenario? Because 10 different people could think it's 10 different things. And I don't want to deliver something to you that isn't what you are thinking success is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So do you have an idea of how is your ability to ask questions changed over time? Like, do you feel like you've gotten more confident in asking questions as you've become more senior?
Oh yeah, totally. Like before, I would be very cautious about the questions, kind of like measuring, is this a good question? And only ask the good questions ones, where like these days I ask all the questions, like from what could be considered the basic ones to the very advanced ones. Like questions like, I don't understand what you're talking about. Can you explain a little bit further so I can understand? So like, I don't care anymore. Like what I care is to get a context so I can do my work better.
Mm-hmm. So then would you say that there's any such thing as a bad question? Or would you? No.
There isn't.
But
all the questions are good.
In the side of maybe, I don't know, maybe this can happen for junior positions. Like sometimes when you're learning this stuff, uh, I know there's no like bad questions, but there are questions that can lead into a weird conversation that
Mm.
will take the conversation out of context, and you will lose the hour you have. And this is like what would you do there if I mean if you are not sure where what to ask and you don't want to distract the conversation to a weird place.
Yeah, so like if for some reason it goes into a direction that I was not planning and it's not useful, then I would stop and say, hey, we are kind of like getting off the track here. Can we can we try again or focus on the things that we are trying to achieve? So, and it's okay. Like sometimes we go sideways, but you have to notice before it's too late. So then you stop and then you go back.
Yeah. But do you think so I mean if you were be like if you're a senior if you have a senior role and you have people in charge and normally you will go with those people to a meeting like it's gonna be you and them what would you say to them to to help them start like asking good questions. And when I say this, is because sometimes you're like afraid. This is a process. You have to learn to talk with like maybe older people. This is like the first one. Sometimes you're like 23 and this guy's like 52. It's like you're like, do I have to ask something? Is he gonna look me in a weird way? Am I gonna look good and stuff? Like how to lose this like to be scared in that place.
So, I think people are usually willing to help you. So if you are in the young stages of your career, uh, you can say, I'm not sure what kind of questions I should be asking. Can you give me some directions? Or here are the things that I'm thinking about. So if it's not the way that I should be thinking about, can you give me some insight so I can, so it's asking for some directions. And if you have like good senior people in the company, they are going to be totally okay with that. What happens sometimes is like you don't have some, people that can give you directions, and you have to be prepared for that as well. And I think like the more you do, the better you become. Like either for asking for help or trying your best to.
That like
Uh,
intuition on where you know.
yeah.
Let's yeah. So Kristen, you go ahead.
Oh, well, so, that was talking about more junior people. So Jennifer had a question about, how do you deal with C-level executives who don't really know the business question they are trying to answer? They're having problems forming their question. Like, how do you sort of guide them to help define the problem?
That's an interesting problem. If they don't know, like it's going to be hard on me to know. Like, uh, but anyway, they should know like at least what is the direction that they want the business to go to. But if they have no idea, if they are totally lost, you can try to use data and kind of like guide them. I don't know. I've never been in this
Identify
situation
a
where, yeah.
So in the same direction, uh, when I mean, how is your process to transform the ideas of the business into an actual question that can be answered with data science? And this is important because sometimes some ideas that they have cannot be solved with the data we have, or right now is not a thing. I mean, you have to wait or something like that. I mean, how is your process to transform this like vague ideas with a direction and a goal into an actionable question?
It's you have to break down, right? And then think through each step instead of like, if you have no idea, like try to think a little bit smaller and then try to answer these smaller questions instead of like thinking big. But again, like I've never had this situation, so it's hard for me to say like a time when I did this. Maybe, I don't know, Kristen, if you have an experience on that and you can maybe chime in or say something.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the questions that I get are, we want to know what the best, the next best action is. We want to create like a flow, and we don't necessarily want to tell you what this flow should look like, but do you have some ideas, and can you do some analysis to suggest, what this like flow should be? And then it's like, well, okay, like what would a good flow look like to you? Is it something that's going to reduce retention, and then we'll look for, the things that would reduce retention? Or is it going to be people that are, using certain features, like getting feature adoption? Does, like are there micro things that lead to like better just overall results? And so I'm working in an area where it's a subscription service, so we have these people paying monthly, so our data is probably a lot different. But then, there's also the questions that come to you of like, we want to understand the people in our base. And maybe they don't know that that's segmentation, but you can suggest segmentation and then work with them to define the variables that we're going to put in that. Or, it's like, hey, we spend millions of dollars a year in advertising. We should probably optimize that. How would you go about optimizing that? And then it becomes a question of like, okay, are we, optimizing for LTV, or are we optimizing for people who just are trying to get in the door? Like, we just want to get the signups. Like what are we optimizing for? So a lot of times, and the marketing spend really is one where, we're probably going to dig into that in 2019, because we haven't done enough work to, and it is a large piece of the budget, to say, hey, how do we most effectively use all these dollars, and with that weigh also like the thoughts of the business and sort of how they want to be advertising.
Yeah, and Jennifer is saying something else. So she said, like they said, oh, if they know the answer but they don't know the questions, or they don't want to take the time to go through a big business problem formulation process. So yeah, I the other thing is like, if they don't know, you kind of like, you can think of like, oh, you don't know what are the problems we are having. You can suggest. So like, as Kristen was saying, maybe we are spending a lot of time on advertising. Should we automate it, or how can we improve that so we can make more, I don't know, more revenue to the company, or spend less money? So you kind of like, you can create opportunities as well. So
yeah. So I think what it will be helpful right now for people will be to imagine we have a case. Like, hey, the business comes to us and they ask, hey, I want to do customer segmentation for advertising. Okay, so what will be your first question here?
So they want to do advertising. Okay, so what kind of advertising? Is this like digital? Is it like a native, kind of like what Twitter does or Facebook? So you cannot do everything. So you have to focus in one area, at least at first. So for example, I worked for an advertisement company in the past, and they were very specific. They were doing native advertising, which is those ads that it's between articles, kind of like in Babs, between in your feed. So they were very specific. So the business was all around that. We didn't do anything else. So then you would have to research the market to see if it's worth it doing it, or if you have competitors, so kind of like some competition analysis. See who is out there. Should I invest, or should we invest our money and time on this area, or should we try something else?
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, I'm sorry. So later on, then it's like once you are more established, it's like what kind of data we'll be tracking, what kind of data do we need, what kind of data we'll be collecting.
Mm-hmm. And then testing too, right? Does that like inform future testing? And then of course that's their own set of questions, right? Like that is a hypothesis. It's a question you're trying to solve. And you know, so have you helped the business to define their hypotheses and their test structure? I know my personal experience is the business will often come to me and say, like, we're thinking of doing a test and we want to do it this way. And I spend a fair amount of time saying, and this isn't just in this business, this is like everywhere where you're dealing with stakeholders and like they're not expected to be people who have a deep background in statistics. So a lot of it is like, okay, like that test design isn't going to work for this reason, or like what you're trying to test is, you know, with that sample size, it's going to take us 6 months to get to that answer. Like, let's think about other ways. And so can you just sort of tell us in your genre where you're in sort of what testing looks like and how you collaborate with the business on that?
Yeah, I have an interesting problem or example. So when I was working for this advertisement company, first of all, they didn't know the role of a data scientist because I was the only one. Mm-hmm. So the first task that I had was to educate people around my work, like how my work was different from engineers, because the team, we had 20 plus engineers and only myself as a data scientist. So I had to educate them on that. And then they kind of like, they didn't give me any task, like specific task, based on the things that I was observing in the company. I said, you know, there is a area, there is an opportunity over there that we should be doing something over there. And this opportunity, I'm sure will make us more revenue. We are missing out. We are missing things over in this process. We should be doing something, and I did. So I created like my idea. I sold my idea to the stakeholders. I showed them the whole path. You know, this is what I'm thinking about. This is how I'm going to execute, and this is what we should expect as an outcome. Mm-hmm. And they were like, okay, cool. That's a great idea. Let's do it. So I did the whole thing. Like, first of all, I had to sell an idea. And then once the idea was sold, I had to execute. And then later on, I had to present and then to share like my results with them.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, because I don't think we talk enough in data science about the fact that a lot of times it is identifying those places where there is an opportunity and it's not on, you know, the 2019 planning map that other people have come up with, because, you know, marketing has their own initiatives, they have their own goals, they have their own thoughts on what they want, and operations is the same thing. They have things that they're trying to do, and then you're like, wait a second, back up, like there's this, you know, there's this massive piece that we don't have either baseline information on, or like if we were to dig deeper and build a model to really understand what's going on there, we could really, you know, increase our personalization or offer a better experience, and that would lead to more revenue. And then because it's not on anyone else's radar, you've got to you know, sometimes you're going all around the business. You're like, okay, let's get marketing together. I'm going to pitch this idea.
Yeah.
You guys need this, and I'm going to tell you why you're going to love it. And then it's like the next day you've got a meeting with somebody else, and it's like, you guys are going to love this idea. Let me tell you what it's going to do for you. And then before you know it, you have buy-in on a project that you came up with yourself from an idea that you noticed. You know, and I think when you're really junior, you don't see into the future that that's like where you'll be someday, because you're like, you know, just like getting tickets, your work is real defined, and then sort of as you grow, you grow
Yeah.
into this place of, you know, working to get buy-in, and a lot of the job is like communicating with the business.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. And I think, you know, when you are in the early stage of your career, this is not going to come. It's like as you grow, and it takes time as well, not only time like experience, but also time in the company. So it's very hard, or it's not going to happen in the way that you are going to get hired and then you have this, as you like your first week, then you have this brilliant idea. No, it takes a while for you to understand the business and what are the areas that they lack, projects or investments.
So one thing here is, sometimes when you're entering in a new business or a new area, it's kind of hard to understand what's going on. I mean, what would you do if for some reason I will tell you, yeah, you're gonna be working as a data scientist in a bank since next week, and you have no idea what does a bank look like from the inside, where are the different areas and stuff. What will be your questions there for, or how would you approach understanding the business in that side?
Yeah, so the way that I do this is like the first few weeks, once I start a job, I schedule meetings with like several people in the company. And then the first questions, it's around what do you do for the company? Uh, who do you work with? And what are you trying to solve? Uh, so, so then it gives you an idea. So each person that it talks to, it has to be from different teams. So you have a overview of the company. So you get someone like, let's say if we're in a bank, you get someone from the data side, and then you get an engineer, and then you get someone from the marketing, and you get someone from the financial side, and then you get someone, you know, you have to talk to several people. That's the best way for you to gather knowledge. So that's usually what I do. It's like the first few weeks is kind of like meetings and asking questions and trying to draw like how the business works.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's been working for me. So
Yeah.
Understanding, so some parts of the business, they have like KPIs and this different stuff. Do you think it's worth for data scientists to understand what are the KPIs and the goals for each area, or do you want to be like more holistic here?
So again, it depends on. I think it's important, regardless. But like depending on where you are in your career, you are going to be more focused on KPIs and how do you get to those KPIs. When you are like on the junior side, you are not sure, or sometimes the KPIs are not available for you to take a look. So it's hard for you to know. But once you get involved with the stakeholders and all that, you have a better understanding what the KPIs look like.
I love how we're talking about, I mean, basically it comes back to communication, right? Like we hear so much all over the place and in all the blogs about all these technical things. And then when you get down to it, like a large piece of the business really is like, you know, Gabriela's new at a company and she's now going to go seek out X guy over here and Y lady over here and find all the information that she needs to put together that domain knowledge that of course you come to the company not having. And there's like this huge amount of communication that we have in this field that I don't know that we talk about enough.
I totally agree.
Jen asked another interesting question. Jen's just firing off the questions today. How did you, on your Super Data Science podcast with Kirill, you talked about being the only data scientist at one point. How did you advocate for yourself, especially as a female and the only data scientist, to get them to see how important data science is and also have them appreciate your unique perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as I mentioned before, it took me like months and months of educating people. So what I would do was I would create presentations and then set a meeting with different parts of the company. So it was like a customized experience. So like I would do presentations in the way that side of the business could understand what I'm talking about. And then show them, this is the value that I bring to the company. You are paying a lot of money for me to be here. So let me show you what kind of value I'm bringing. So again, it's showing the value, showing them that my workflow, how my workflow works. One thing that was very hard for me in that particular company was the velocity of the work. So for example, for engineers in the team, we would have like stand-ups, right, every day. So then they would say, oh, yesterday I created that thing, that product, and then to them fixing this bug, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, oh, yesterday I got the data, and then I started exploring the data, and today I'm still exploring the data. So,
like I'll do the same thing.
And talk to me a week from now; it might be clean.
Right. Or like sometimes I was like, I'm running this model. I'm trying to tweak some parameters. I don't have anything to show. It's going to take me like several days, weeks to show you something.
It is a very important thing you're mentioning, Gabriela, because trying to, I'm seeing a lot of people trying to adapt like the same Scrum methodologies and agile stuff for data science. It's not that easy because sometimes you don't have daily improvements. You just have daily plots you're using to understand why is this data like this. And this is not something that may be interesting for everyone, but in the end, it will be. And this is different from like a regular engineering process.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I had a very hard time trying to, to be in that same pattern that the engineers had. So by one point, at one point, I told my manager, hey, this Scrum or this daily stand-up, not Scrum, this daily stand-up is killing me because I feel like I'm always behind or that I'm not doing enough. So can I be quiet? And that
not
you're like, everyone's tickets are moving. My tickets aren't moving.
Exactly. And then I would, that's exactly. And then I would see the tickets like they were being done. And I'm seeing the same tickets for 2 weeks. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so slow. And then, but I was not, right? So then I told them, I said, let's do this. I'm not participating actively on the stand-ups, but I'm going to give you an update weekly. And I will show what I've been doing too.
Yeah,
I've also broken my tickets into a million pieces. And I don't necessarily recommend that either, but like I tried it. I'd be like, and today I'm going to handle nulls in like 20 different variables. you know, and this is something that had like 200 variables, right? And it's like, and then, you know, I'm gonna, like, it was like, here's just handling nulls, here's putting zeros
Yeah.
where appropriate, here's dropping
Yeah.
variables that are like, you know, have too much stuff missing, you know.
All
Yep.
right. So I think so we have been answering some questions, but there are a lot of different questions here in the Q&A for Gabriela. So I think we should start. So I think the first question was from Vijay Kumar. I think we talked about this, but if you can mention him, what lessons did you suggest to someone who's new to stats and aim to become a data scientist?
Oh well, this question. So it's let's see. I have so many resources and things. First of all, I always say that if you want to become a data scientist, don't forget about statistics. So a lot of people think that the only thing that they need to know is machine learning and all the algorithms, but you should know statistics, and you'll be surprised like how much statistics will help you thinking about or framing the problem and solving problems. And a lot of times you are not going to use any sophisticated algorithm. You're going to
Yeah.
use like, let's say, logistic regression, or you have to do like statistical tests, hypothesis tests. so so let me think about resources. So there is a course on Coursera by my Mine. She's from Duke. She has great materials. She's all about free resources and open education. So you can find her on Coursera. She has an open intro stats book that is free. She has a lot of stuff free. So I would recommend
Awesome.
her material.
Can you write that down in the chat section for
Yeah.
people to know it, please? Yes. So in the
Yeah.
meantime, I'm gonna ask another question. This is from Harry Santana. I think this is an interesting question. Your role sounds amazing. Do you find that you often have to justify what your team does and how it benefits the company? And how do you do that?
So who asked this question? Sorry, it's
Hari.
Hari Santana.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so as I said, like my role, it's very unique because we are not selling any product, or we are not showing, or like directly, we are not showing any IBM products. So what we don't have to justify it. Like it's a different approach. So as being involved in the community or being out there showing what the team is doing, you are bringing people to the website, or you are bringing people, or you are making people to know about IBM and what are the cool things that they are doing, we are doing, right? So like either from open source point of view or deep learning. So it's bringing our awareness of what IBM has been doing. So it's kind of like being vocal. So I know I usually do this comparison, but it's kind of like you are selling the company as you know, a good place, or that we are developing these new technologies, or we are working with very interesting problems. But we don't have to justify. I don't have to justify to the business. It's kind of like they know that those things are very valuable for the company. And you can, like, just to give an idea, all the, at least big companies, they have developer advocates, like several, like thousands.
How many are they in IBM right now? Do you have an idea?
I have no idea. Like thousands.
Thousands?
Yeah.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Like in my team, like in my center, for the open source and deep learning, we are probably 30, 40, but we have in other places.
30 or
Oh,
40.
that's really cool.
That's huge.
So Sagar, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his name. He said if you would know business analytics. So basic, no, nope. The question before that is from Diana. She asked about the new automated machine learning tools, and do you think those tools are useful for companies in the early stages of building out predictive analytics in order to move forward quickly? What are your thoughts on AutoML?
I think it's a great tool. And again, if you don't have like a big team, or you cannot spend a lot of time thinking about models, just automate it, make this process automatic, and then at least you have something to show. Like if you don't have time, you have to iterate quick. You have to use something that can help you to.
Then you can have the daily stance.
Yeah, I think it's even easier to implement in the early stages than it is in the later stages when people are more sophisticated and their problems are a little bit more specialized, In the beginning, it's like, give me all your data, I'll give you a retention model. Could you please give us a roadmap as to the relevant things to learn which are extensively used as a data scientist?
You are asking for the. That's a good ask. I don't have a roadmap. I think like each person has a different path.
Mm-hmm.
So what I would say is find things that you are interested in, and that's your roadmap. There is no like my roadmap, or like my path was different from Favio and then Kristen, and each one has their unique path. So it's not like, it's not a recipe. There is no recipe.
Yeah. But Gabriela, we both are statistics ladies, so our path is not so unsimilar. My master's
that's very rare.
Statistics. Yeah, no, I know. I graduated. I was one of 4
you're rare
people.
creatures.
Yeah. I'm like a unicorn.
Ah.
Yeah, my second master's is in statistics too, but even though we have the same kind of like background, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
I specialized more in one area. Maybe you did in a different area, because statistics is so broad, right? So.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and my bachelor's degree was in mathematics, but I'm sure we shared similar struggles of, the programming that I did in my master's degree was not very deep. So then you get into the real world and all of a sudden you have to like actually learn how to code, and that was a struggle.
Yeah. and here's the other thing. I probably you didn't have any machine learning courses. I've never taken any machine learning courses during school.
So yeah, I did. So I had regression. So all the regressions, but yeah, I learned cluster analysis and k-means and times.
You're lucky.
Cluster analysis, decision trees, and time series all in industry. I didn't learn it in grad school.
So yeah.
I think we have an interesting question here. This is from Rafael Garcia. He asked, when we already have a data set, a business objective, KPI as variables, what is the best way to clean the data and try to avoid any disturbance of variables not considered at the beginning? Like, how does the manual intervention of the user within a process that tries to be automated?
Where's that question? I need to read that again.
Yeah, it's a long question.
Yeah, I don't know if I understood the question very well, but
it's basically what's the best way?
I will reframe in a different way, or I will reframe in a way that I'm thinking about. So like, let's say you have a model, and or you have like several variables and some of the variables were not important, but then the business, like the stakeholder says you have to include this variable. Sometimes it happens.
Yes,
like,
it does.
Yeah.
They,
Yes,
they bring with the knowledge and they say you have to include this variable even though it's not important. So it's kind of like a manual introversion. It's like you have to include and go for it. But I don't know if that was the question that Rafael was trying to ask. But
the question was around that, and he asked what to do to avoid any disturbance of the variables. Like when you add this new variable.
Issues with like multicollinearity or whatever, that's not going to fly. And it depends on like what the state of your data is and how much work it's going to be to change things around. But like if your data is already coming in really clean and it's a question of running through like a variable selection algorithm and saying, okay, this is my new subset, these variables got pushed out, like it really depends on the model you're using and the problem that you're trying to solve, because trying to add a variable may be a large pain, or it may just be that like you add it, you rerun, and like life goes on. I don't know if you guys agree with that or if you have like different thoughts.
No, I think that's kind of a normal path to follow, maybe. I think we can go back to Sagar or Sagar, I don't know. Question.
So I think this is going to be our last question, though.
Yeah, this is our last question, but it's interesting. It says, like there's in the business analytics professionals, there are tools for collecting requirements from clients, for which they have a series of questions. Is there something similar to data science in like a framework to ask to get a complete understanding of the business? It's like, do we have a set of questions we always need to ask?
I think the main question is what they are trying to achieve. What is the goal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
and I think,
like, how will you collect those requirements? Because I think that's what he's asking. Like normally, I mean, I don't know where he's coming from. Like he has or she has some way of collecting requirements from clients. Now, when you're in data science, can you use the same tools, or do you have different tools for that?
So I think I'll just jump in. I had written a blog article on, setting a hypothesis test up for success. And I like, obviously that's one little piece, but I said like, okay, we need to talk about the hypothesis. We need to discuss sample size. We need to discuss, it's an article that I have, and it's, got like a form of like 12 different things that I run a stakeholder through to make sure that all my T's are crossed and all my I's are dotted. And realistically, you could come up with questions or a framework for a bunch of different things. And what I set up for hypothesis tests would probably work in multiple industries, or I could bring it with me. But like the questions are so dependent on the field and the specific problem. Like this is, I set up a set of questions for one small task that we do as a data scientist. And to, could something like that be set up for other areas and things and problems? Yes, but there'd be like so many things that you'd have to consider and weigh, and it would probably need to be specific to a certain domain.
Yeah. All right. So, Gabriela, any final words for people here?
Yeah. So if you don't know about Our Ladies, I should talk about Our Ladies for a minute. So I founded a group called Our Ladies 6 years ago. So Our Ladies is the mission of Our Ladies is to promote diversity in the R community. So R is a programming language that several data scientists, statisticians, researchers use for analyzing data. And it's a great community. We have chapters all over the world. South America, for example, is growing. It's crazy. We have chapters in US, Canada, Africa, Asia, Australia, everywhere there. All the places that I can think of. If there isn't a chapter in your city and you want to create or to organize one, you can send us an email and we'll send you all the information, everything that you need. Ourladies.org is the main website. So we have a lot of good information over there.
Yeah, I just added to the chat. That's awesome. And I've heard of Our Ladies a lot. Like a lot. In Mexico, they're big too.
Yeah. The Mexico, I think Xalapa is one, like they've been doing a lot of meetups, but they have Mexico City. There are a few in Mexico. In Brazil, there are a few, it's such a great community. I think like one advice that I would give to anyone who were trying to get into data science or like to grow in the data science career is find a local community, like find local groups, network with other people, get to know other people, get to know people working for companies or companies that you are interested. Networking is the key, one of the key of success.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Gabriela. And I think we all have so much to thank to like LinkedIn and these types of meetups and like GitHub and all of these places that exist right now for us to learn from each other and to communicate our ideas, hopes, and fears. I think it's so cool that we can do this right now. And thank you for being one of the creators of these spaces.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much for joining us today. You were our very first guest. We appreciate it, and I'm so glad I got to see you and hear your perspective.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. Anytime I'm available to talk to you. It was a pleasure to talk to you both. It was a pleasure to meet Kristen during the Data Science Go conference. Unfortunately, Favio was not able to be there, but next week we'll be, or next year we'll be there. So that's what matters. Everybody's going to be there. Yes. So,
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Gabriela. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kristen, for being here. Remember that this will be on YouTube later. So make sure you visit our website, datasciencelive.com, where we will put in all of the information for you to subscribe to the channel and to see more about this. Thank you, and have a great night and life and everything.
Bye. Good night,
Bye-bye.
guys.